everybody. Good day, good evening, good night, and good luck. No, anyway, hey, buddy. It is Wednesday, November 2nd, 2016 in beautiful downtown Teasdale, Utah. And it has been beautiful here. We've had this stretch of fall weather that has been crushingly beautiful. I have been practicing, been meditating every day. I've been working out or playing tennis every other day. So kind of alternate that. And I'm just talking about what I've been doing in practice-wise because that's what we're about here is transformational practice. And it is getting to the season where winter will come on. We could get a blizzard any point here as we move into November. And our beloved tennis court will turn into a glacier field for several months. And but we have done to kind of fill that huge void. We've started doing yoga again, and we have a meditation room up in upstairs in our house that we've used for many years to surprisingly, guess what, meditate. And but it's a really good space for Pam and I to do yoga together. And we set up one of our old iMac computers, and there's a CD or DVD rather that I really like. It's called AM/PM Yoga by Gaiam, and it features Rodney Yee and another person. I can't remember her name right now. But we started off with the 20-minute morning one, and it's pretty gentle, and it just start to get your yoga chops back, and it feels real good. I mean, oh my gosh, talking about being mindful of your body. Start doing yoga. It's just like, oh yeah, it all starts coming back. And I've worked out with this particular video before. I really like it with my students a lot. When we were having people in our home, we have addicts come here to train with us and to heal, and we use it a lot. And I really like it. It's very nice. And so I'm gonna get that going for a few weeks and ratchet it up into a little more challenging routines. But that's been good. And also, I think we are going to, in addition to, there's so much going on in the iAwake thing, is I have a dear friend, Dr. Bob Weathers, and he is taught psychology in academia for many, many years. He's a great speaker. He's a beautiful man. He's a great jazz drummer. He's in recovery. He's a meditator, practitioner, et cetera. Very wise, funny, brilliant guy. And we just meet once a week to talk. And he said, well, why don't we just record these conversations and expand them and have them with other people and start doing some kind of podcast show. So we're gearing up for that. We're starting to build a studio in another one of our rooms upstairs where we can record these conversations. So I think that's going to be, if you're not speaking, mute your microphone because we hear it all. We hear everything going on out there. So so that should be really exciting and really fun. And I think it's going to be called the Dr. Bob and John Show or something like that. An integral conversation about practically everything. Yeah, I mean, and just saying to what Jade, I mean, there is no absolute freedom. It's ridiculous. We have to, when we live in community, we live with other species and other peoples and everything. We give up the right just to do whatever the hell we want, just because we feel like doing it, and we have to walk lightly on the earth and love each other and respect each other and follow reasonable rules. So that's why, and we need some kind of government. It needs to be, good enough to accomplish that and to get us through, to the, to give our something, for the generations to come, human generations and all species generations. Very, very important. So we need to, we need to pay attention to that. And I've always thought that, getting into politics again is that from an integral perspective, that the goal of our political system would be to build a very strong, viable middle class that is available for everyone. And so, and if you don't build that middle class that is educated, that is in an integral way that works both on their physical, you know, it supplies their physical and interior health, and you know, what is enough? What is enough wealth? I think the way I define it is that you have to be able to live with dignity. Okay, so that means you know, you should have a home, and you should be a stakeholder in your country, in your community, in the world, on the planet, in the, you know, however you want to, in the universe, however you want to grow those circles. And so that should really be the emphasis, but because from a viable, available, and possible a middle class, true democracy can emerge. But if you don't have an educated, dignified middle class that's available to everyone, then you run into problems.
Let's get to Lynn. Lynn's got some basic questions here. First of all, why do you have to listen to the music while sitting? She says.
Oh, you don't.
And the manuals all direct you to sit in a comfortable position, as do all the instructions for meditation. Why sitting? Why not lie down and completely relax?
Yeah, generally speaking, we're hamsters standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And meditation is a long, ancient tradition. And generally speaking, in meditation, not always, but in some, as it's come to us, and sit up. And a lot of people seem to think, and I think this is true, that if you have a straight spine, that's a really good way to meditate, because there's certain energetic things that go on up and down the spine, as in Kundalini and chakras and all that good stuff. And it just feels good, and it helps you stay alert. If you slouch over, not so much. You can just feel it. Now, lying down, that's also a really cool way to meditate. Oftentimes I've done that. They call it in yoga the corpse pose, you know, where you just lie down like this. And if you're really exhausted, I usually put a little pillow under my head and just relax into that. And that's been really, really cool. But generally, you know, I do that when I'm really, really tired, and often about halfway into it, maybe a half hour or so, I'll get inspired and I'll sit back up and keep meditating. So it's generally, it's a traditional thing, but also anecdotally that we found that works, you know. However, I mean, there's some traditions. If you see, I've seen videos of Buddhist monks meditating. They're just sitting there like that, you know, slunched over. It's like, you think Buddhist monks are all going to have great posture. I mean, Tibetan Buddhists I'm speaking of, and meditate, you know, like Buddha statues, and they really have terrible posture. So I don't know what that's about. But anyway, so yeah, I hope that answers the question. Have you set up a site where you can watch the recordings? To Pam?
Well, yeah, Alice, I was just typing this out, but we're going to be probably putting access in a few places. We just finished editing last week's video and just put into place kind of how we're going to handle the audio, which is the same way we did before. So by the end of this week, you actually should have access to a bunch of the videos and the audios from the last couple months. Thanks for your patience. As we've moved over to this new system, we've been kind of working on that.
Yeah, we've recognized that we're probably going to have to hire somebody. Anybody who wants to move to Teesdale and be the content manager, because there's a lot of it, and we have a lot more on hard drives than we have out there. So hopefully we'll start doing a better job with that.
And then Lynn is saying, what is the best track to listen to while working for focus and concentration?
Neurocharger 2.0 is great. I think even the release tracks are really good. There's a NeuroFlow Focus. It's a great one. Audio Oxygen's good. Audio Chi's pretty good.
I also like the Spark. I use that a lot
Spark?
when I'm working.
Great, yeah.
The first, there's 3 tracks. I use one, actually, track 1 for that a lot. There's also Flow State. Yeah, I guess I should write all these down, Lynn. We threw out a whole bunch at you from that question. You all, let's think about this. So John started off with the politics, and it's really kind of got some people engaged in that still. There's chat going on with this. So I guess the question is, do we want to, sort of put energy into that now?
Well, it is up, and I do think about it a lot. And, if we're going to look at kind of using integral things, there's many developmental levels that are competing with one another. If you go to spiral dynamics or other developmental systems, and one of these the consistencies in these different levels is that everybody sees a different world according to where you're at developmentally. So, when some people hear Donald Trump, they just get inspired. They go, my God, somebody's finally there for speaking the truth. Other people just get horrified, and go, well, there it goes. Here's our American Mussolini. And so these are both are honest, and both are interpreting the world according to the interpretive tools that they have at the developmental levels they're at. In spiral dynamics, they say when you get to second tier levels, you begin to realize all of these different levels are all part of the human evolutionary process, and everybody is born at square one. And depending what time you're born in history, or what kind of opportunities you've had educationally, culturally, etc., you get to move to these higher levels of development. So there's a big difference from kind of very primitive post-tribal strongmen, slavery, and all the stuff that was going on, maybe the Roman Empire and earlier, to a liberal democracy, a social democracy, say in Sweden. I mean, that's obviously there's some things have changed there. So we have to understand that, and all of these different levels have their strengths, and they also have their weaknesses, and that's why levels, it keeps evolving, because different historical levels that kind of dominate at the time become no longer sufficient to address the issues of the time that it is in, and so a new level of development emerges from the chaos and the stress. So it could be that we're going for that. However, the job of the intricately informed is to really work that each one of these levels can be the healthiest possible expression that it can be, and I could get into that in a really long conversation, but is there any other okay. Well, I disagree. I think it's always developmental, and if you don't look at that as one of your lenses, you're really going to miss what's going on. It gets very confusing. Looking at things developmentally helps us to understand what's going on. It doesn't make it any happier sometimes, but at least it gives us a deeper understanding, and with an understanding, perhaps we can start coming up with answers, and ways to meet everyone's needs in a democratic and dignified way. So,
John, I'll just clarify real quick, rather than taking up a bunch of time in the chat and everything. So what I'm getting at is that the only way in which to really understand how someone else is viewing something is to literally step into their body and live their life with their decision-making algorithms. So we're observing Donald Trump, but all of the people with their biases in their mind, and I'm not saying these are incorrect one way or another, but what I'm saying is we do have a bias, we have a perspective, a pre-planned algorithm of how that individual is going to behave, right? We have an expectation. So by setting that expectation, we're putting that energy out in the air, which then that person is more likely going to feel that and feed into it. So by separating yourself and allowing yourself to exist in a very neutral state towards a thing, you allow that thing to be more closely aligned with what it actually is. And if it actually is some sort of a thing that does not resonate in your world, then it will naturally drift away, right? We'll build systems that just make it obsolete. So rather than feeding any sort of energy into politics, at least in my case, I simply try to have a neutral perspective and not come in with any sort of notion as to how someone's going to behave. And if they do behave in a manner that's disrespectful to others or something, I can look at it, and then rather than focusing too much energy on changing them, because I'm not going to, I focus on inside me, what is resonating with the way that person is treating somebody else. Am I ever guilty of that type of nonchalant way of disrespecting another or something like that? So I just channel it within and try to build from that. And then the more strongly I build my foundation, the more I'm just inspired naturally in that own foundation to come out and build new things in the world that then create better and better situations for everybody.
No, well said. Thank you. Yeah, one of the things that developmentalists do say is that as we move up these different levels of evolutionary, ethical, moral, spiritual, intellectual development, is the ability to take on more perspectives. You can start seeing things through other people's eyes more and more. When a good example of that is the Civil War era in the United States, where you had for using spiral dynamics, they used colors, so it wouldn't become a racial thing, but it's like the South was agrarian blue, kind of a fundamentalist culture, and in their interpretation of the Bible, they had every right to enslave Africans because of the sins of Ham, the son of Noah, in the book of Genesis. They really use that to justify slavery. Now, sitting here, we go, well, that's a stretch, but they didn't think so. That's the way they saw it. And in the North, there was it was becoming more and more industrial, more and more modern or orange. And at that point, you could say, wait a second, it's like I can put myself in the shoes of those Black people, and it ain't okay to own other people. It just ain't right. Okay. So those are, and there was a big bloody war, 500,000 people died in that thing. I think our population was like 13 million at the time. It was a huge chunk of American population that were either killed or wounded. And back then, when you were wounded, it's much more likely you would die than today. So anyway, we've gotten off into an interesting thing. Anybody else want to change the subject, or should we plow into this a little bit more?
So we've got a couple dynamics going on right now. There are those that want to engage in the political, and there's others that don't want to talk about it and find it.
And I completely can relate. I have really not watched much news lately. It's just, and I find a lot of people that I talk to here in our little community, they just don't want to watch anymore. It's become so ugly and so stressful. Everybody has electoral, overkill, and are just tired of it. And it is, however, the elephant largely bouncing around the room, at least in the United States and also around the world. I found in my travels, in my years of living abroad, that often people outside the United States know a lot more about American politics than the average American, strangely enough, because we are a big influence on the whole planet. So, so there it is. And it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel, to be angry at injustice, and, at least from where I'm sitting, and just how you deal with it. And the Enlightenment is not becoming schizoid. It's becoming ever deeply more human. At the same time, we're connected to the big story, which is what we truly are at the deepest level. So how to hold both those things at the same time in a way that's real and alive, and not just merely an intellectual structure, which is okay. Intellectual structure, nothing wrong with that, but we need to deepen that into a living place. And we do that, so what is, then what does the politics look like coming from a place that is awake at the cutting edge of the deepest levels that we know currently as human beings? It's a great question, I think. So, anyway, yeah, this is great. No wonder I don't do a political show. Everybody gets mad at you. So, it's not the first time. So, anything else, Pam, that you want to add to the discussion?
Well, the only thing sort of that's coming down the pipeline is Wan Su, the teachings of Wan Su. We're about to move into beta testing for that. This is a new, interesting narrative story approach that Lee Spusta is putting together along with entrainment. So stay tuned for that. That'll be a while, but we're about to move into beta testing. Lynn just asked a question above. It's funny, we've got 2 tracks going on. Can I assume there's no negative side effect to leaving the tracks play in the background all day while I work?
Well, yeah, I generally just be sensitive. Everybody's nervous system is a little bit different. And if it starts to feel like there's some kind of overwhelm, if you listen to resonance, all day, God, I don't know who could do that. It's very, very powerful stuff. So especially if you turn it up. But the other stuff I've listened to, hours in the background, and it seems to be fine. Just use the ones we were talking about, and then just monitor your own responses to them. But if you seem to be really energized and going in a flowing place, rock on, But if it starts to be, you get too energized, then just back off and turn it off for a while. These things are really powerful. You can't do these things for hours and hours and hours. I mean, the deep meditative ones are just too powerful. About the max that I can pull off, and I've been doing this for years, is about a 3-hour meditation. And that is like really something. It's a real push. Yeah. And we've had a lot of anecdotal stuff about how this has really helped kids out. And, really young kids are having trouble sleeping or having night terrors, or emotionally, when kids listen to this, they don't seem to get kind of the effects that adults or adolescents. I mean, there seems to be some kind of developmental evolutionary thing happens when you hit adolescence, that you start being able to be a little more self-reflective, a little more symbolic thinking, and there's just a different shift, and you don't kind of find the kind of profound inner realizations and stuff in the pre-adolescent population, but they get super other benefits. In some ways, they're even more sensitive to this technology than adults. I mean, the brain is in a really it's just developing very quickly, and so it's really felt.
Do you see her follow-up question there
about the asthma? And yeah. I'm not sure what the question is. What do you mean by the symptoms you might see in them? Are you talking about asthma, or are you talking about the audio oxygen? Pam?
Well, that would be for Lynn.
Yeah.
So what negative side effects may I see in my kids? I'm assuming, Lynn, you mean if you're using the tracks with them, are there negative side effects? Yes. Okay. Well, that's what she's asking.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, everybody's nervous system is very similar and also different. So if the tracks would make them very hyper or some kind of negative behavior, I mean, we've never had that reported, but I would just go slow and introduce it in a way that they can understand it. And, this sound is like, superhero stuff, and it'll help you, be more alert and be more wise. I heard a conversation one time where a man was explaining his little hyper kid how to meditate. And he said, Superman, not Superman, it was Spider-Man. He says, Spider-Man? He goes, yeah, he was a big Spider-Man fan. He gets up on a wall and there's like a bad guy down there, and he just freezes and he just watches him. Well, that's what meditation is. You just stop like Spider-Man, looking at a bad guy hanging on a wall. And so, wow. And so it was, and that's speaking to language, and where people can understand, which is a very integral move, by the way. So yeah, so just pay attention to it and see how it does. And please let us know what you're finding out, because I mean, of all of the different populations that use this stuff, that's probably we have the least amount of data on, and we get a lot of anecdotal stuff, and people have been using it with their kids for years, and thus far it's been very positive. But just use it with wisdom and discretion, and see how it goes.
Yeah, I just included a FAQ about kind of typical overwhelm symptoms, like just feeling on edge, quick-tempered, kind of being more reactive, strong anxiety, emotional outbursts. That shows up as some typical symptoms when there's what we call overtraining or too much stimulation.
Yeah, and we have more data about that with adults, because they tended to do that. But we don't get a lot of that. You know, it has happened, but I haven't received an email or communication about people doing that in a long time. So maybe people are, you know, and originally iAwake was one of the purposes of making these new binaural tracks was to make them more powerful, yet at the same time gentler. So you didn't have a lot of the overwhelm that people were reporting in some of the earlier iterations of this technology that I started out using. So yeah, so we don't get that much. But yeah, it is possible, you know, too much water, which is a really good thing, and you'll drown, right? So anything can be used and abused. But if you use it as, you know, with wisdom and as recommended, I think you'll be fine. And we haven't really seen, you know, any really bad effects. You know, we haven't had people going crazy or schizophrenic episodes or, you know, all these things that you could, you know, we don't have to, if you listen to these drug commercials on TV and these happy people running in the park having perfect lives and again, this will help you with your, you know, whatever. And then, you know, have some guy on, it sounds like he's on speed or something, read off all the possible negative side effects, which are like horrifying sometimes. Like, who would want to take one of these things? So anyway, yeah, we haven't found that thus far. And doesn't mean it'll never happen, but, you know, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. And yeah, we'd love any feedback.
John?
Yeah.
So I think last time I was on, we were talking a little bit about other technologies that can be used in assistance with iAwake, as far as multiplying the effect of entrainment. So we were looking at like lights and better sound for headphones and things like that. And then one of the things that's been going through my mind that I'd like to see developed is like a sensory deprivation tank with like LEDs on the inside or something behind a glass panel or something that can do, you know, light therapy on top of somebody who's floating there, and then have really good audio around in the tank or something, build it acoustically to be able to amplify the experience as well.
You know,
not even take into account the psychonauts.
I was very interested in these tanks, flotation tanks, and when I got interested in them, apparently they just went off the market. And somebody later told me it was something about the AIDS scare or something like that. People were scared that it would transmit the disease and stuff like that. But I couldn't find them for years. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, we seem to be living in a renaissance of these flotation tanks, which is fantastic. So a couple of times ago, I was in Boulder, Colorado for some reason, some business thing. And I got me a flotation tank, and I went and got special Bluetooth earbuds that you can use underwater, and I had it all set up. So I think I did like 70 minutes of digital euphoria when I was in the flotation tank, and oh my God, it was really freaking powerful. It was an amazing experience, and I just been dealing with the death of my father, so I was in a state of really grieving, and I went into, I mean, in using mythic terms, you know, it really felt like a crucifixion and a death and a rebirth, you know, which is actually kind of classic for, I think, for these tanks, you know, kind of the rebirthing thing. But I just went into this state of where, you know, I wasn't suffering, I was suffering, you know, I was just like, it just blotted out the ego structure, and it was like, holy cow. And when you get into those deep places, I mean, a little bit of, you know, ego self-help, is this going to last forever? You know, am I stuck in this death, you know, in this place of being suffering? And then it began to shift, and it began to, it's like the sun began to come up, and the light came back, and it just kind of, I can only describe it as being a very, very holy experience. It really put me back together, and I came out feeling, I felt really purified and very powerful. So yeah, so that's my, you know, having read about these things for years and always wanting to experience them. Because we live in an area where there's nothing like that, I have to do it when I'm traveling. But it's I use those two technologies, and I think the light thing could be wonderful. You know, I'm thinking about starting up some kind of production company where we're using VR and virtual reality and the entrainment. And I don't know if you guys have seen the recordings of this, but we have a young colleague in Germany. He's a German. His family immigrated from China to Germany, and he's creating some of the most incredibly transformative, beautiful 3D video imagery. It's fantastic. And we have Lee Spusta, who's creating stories now, entrainment stories. And he has a wonderful voice, and the stuff he creates. If you don't believe me, listen to Solar Infusion, Deep Delta, Deep Recovery. That's all the sound is created by Lee. Very, very talented creator of this stuff. And I'm working towards now seeing if we can get some kind of production company. So we really take these different technologies into together, you know, and wow, wouldn't that be an amazing thing to have in drug and alcohol treatment centers? You know, you come in, okay, this is your meditation time, blam, you know, you're in this very powerful, transformative state. And our friends in the Neuromore folks in Miami, they did a mindfulness conference, and they were using VR glasses and iAwake tracks, and there are also these kind of body things that you put on now on your back and your front that actually resonate to whatever entrainment vibrations going on in the brain. So it's like, holy cow, you know.
Super
So you know, what a wonderful thing to start using all these technologies to help with, you know, depression and Alzheimer and addiction and PTSD and just generally waking up our brains to, you know, function optimally, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many applications. Very cool thing. And I really got VR when we went to this conference. I'd never really used it or whatever. And there was a lot of it at the Trans Tech conference. And then we went to the store. I don't know if you guys have heard of it or if it's in your area, called Beta. I think it's like there's 3 of them in the country, and people actually pay to have their new technologies demoed there. So the people that run the place are not trying to sell you stuff. They're just allowing you to use it because they make their money not so much from sales, but just by having it placed there. And I went into the virtual thing. I was playing some basketball game, and I was in this big basketball court, and I had three-point shots to make. And when I'd make them, which weren't often, you know, everybody cheer and everything. When I'd miss them, they were throwing things at me. So I had virtual things coming in. It's pretty wild, but I definitely got a taste. Oh, yeah, and your hands are like holding these things that have different controls on them, but what you see in your virtual reality is real human hands doing human tasks. So I think the potential to use it in a good way is amazing. And thanks for saying that. But yeah, in the last year or so, we've just been partnering and working with people to add our what we're doing to work with others, and I think that's just the way to go. So.
Well, thanks for answering that, John. I've been curious about that use myself. I come from an IT background, and before that, pharmacy technician, and I've studied many different fields from neuroscience to quantum physics. So I see really the human race right now, cyclically, we're reaching an apex of a kind of an evolutionary cycle. And I think that's, you know, what's causing a lot of the stress in the system and everything. Everybody's trying to figure out what's right and what's the best way to do these things. And I think it's interesting to see a synthesis of computer coding and virtual reality, these other methods in which we can entrain our brain in experiences, basically mimic what we do in our sleep, but then hijack it for helping people work through their psychological and developmental challenges in life. And I think that there's nobody who isn't psychologically damaged, really, at least in our current world format, because of frankly, we've had kids raising kids, and then other people looking at, you know, very old books and manuals and things, and this is the way that it always has to be done, rather than simply taking it as a tool and saying, okay, well, this seems to be effective for a certain portion of people. Let's see if we can create something that works 99% of the time, and then we'll figure out the other will make it adaptable enough that in each person it can evolve the way that it needs to empower their own meditation and their own growth.
Yeah, I like that. That's kids teaching kids. Yeah, one of the most important jobs that any human being can have is raising children, and we don't get a lot of training, to do that. So
well, kids are inherently pretty good to begin with. We train it out of them. They know how to play. If we created a world in which playing was the highest priority, then all of our efforts right now in the Western culture and in the industrial nations and stuff, it would all be towards creating a standard of living in which you could just go out and interact in a very playful format with other human beings. And I think that's why so many people are stressed out, because we see that potential, we see that possibility, and then we see all these older systems that are just grinding people out still, and it's not working anymore. And most people are feeling that internal disconnect from the spiritual growth that they know is possible and the playfulness of that. And the day-to-day grind of real life. So I think if we put our priority on empowering people to have fun as often as possible, then we will build tools that empower that, tools that increase our ability to sustain ourselves with minimal effort in that regard, be able to grow food that reliably feeds us, be able to teach ourselves reliably so that we don't grow up with a bunch of psychological hang-ups and issues, and that we inherently are taught or never untaught how to respect each other. Because again, kids are just programmed basically by their nature. They're kind of born in a very, very pure state, and then we take that and we take the golden egg that's producing everything that we need, all the joy that we need in the world, and we kind of turn it into this iron or flat sword, or shield or whatever the current grinding system feels that we need.
Yeah, we have some partners that we've been doing some stuff with out of Dubai. That's where they're located, and they're pretty connected up to
Dupuy, yes.
Yeah, and they have the ministry of. They just started the Ministry of Happiness. If I'm ever elected president, you're going to get to be the Minister of Happiness. Wouldn't that be a wonderful job? How can we make our people happy? All people's happy. It'd be great. And we don't think about it. You go, oh, Ministry of Happiness, like. Why don't I think of that? It's like, it seems like a pretty obvious thing. It's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's right there in the beginnings of the American political experiment, getting back to politics. But anyway, so, hey, thank you. And Pam said you're in Utah? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm up in Salt Lake City, at least for another month and a half. Then I'm down to Brazil and Louisiana. Going to the Exosphere Academy down in Brazil for 2 months, and they focus on training for the creative economy. They've got different thought streams like philosophy and such. So after that, I really plan on coming back to America and starting some sort of company. I'm just figuring out which idea I want to develop, because as you can imagine, I've got a few bouncing around, and it's figuring out I don't care about the money. What I care about is being able to help people improve their life, not only mentally immediately, which then spirals out a greater and greater change. Because if you change the spin of a single atom, right, you get something totally different than you would have gotten before. If you look at a situation in a positive light as opposed to a negative light, you're instantly going to change how you react, and you can react from a more loving state if you're looking for what this experience is bringing into your life in each moment. We just kind of disconnect that and say we only want to be open to the experiences and what they're teaching us when we're meditating, right? When I'm at work, I don't want to have transformative experiences. I just want to get my work done, but I think that each moment in life can be transformative, and it doesn't have to be an inherently difficult thing. It can be just fun and games. It really can be. We have the technology to do it. It's how long are we going to continue to allow ourselves to be limited from being the child that we are inside? The child, when it becomes completely unbound, will come out and just change the world of the adult with their magic. They don't even need anything. It's all imagination, but you can convince the adult that it's real, right, with your story if you're compelling enough. And then the adult wants to build a new environment in which you can continue to tell your stories.
Well, we'll stay in touch. I'd be very interested in what you come up with. And yeah, we've been doing the same thing, trying to do something that really matters and helps change people. And it's like progress is made by body links. You fall on your face, you pick yourself up, and you keep learning and moving forward. You're saying you're going to Brazil to Louisiana. Why are you going to Louisiana?
My mom lives down in Louisiana, so I'm flying out there mid-December.
Where does she live?
On the north side of that big lake that surrounds
By
New Orleans.
Okay, yeah. We may be going to Louisiana for a while because Pam's mom lives in Monroe, and my dad's family. And I have a lot of family there, but she's getting old, and she may need us to come in and be with her. So it seems like we're bouncing around to the same states. I don't have any.
Hey,
synchronistic of you.
Hey, Jade, have you heard of Don Estes and any of his work? Have you been tracking at the Portico?
I haven't. Jiddu Krishnamurti is one I got introduced to recently.
So Don Estes is really working on immersive kinds of environments. He's not using water, but we tested out some of his stuff at TransTech. So he's got a zero gravity chair, most amazing chair to ever lie down in. And then he hooks you up to audio and light and puts a vibrational thing right here. It was a dolphin. That was one of my favorite parts.
You look at technologies like that and how they create a very, very immersive experience. And that's what the world of VR calls it, is immersion. It's your level of being convinced that you're no longer in your body, you're somewhere else in a different experience. And there's a group up here. Thanks, Lynn. We'll miss you.
Bye, Lynn.
The Void here up in Linden, they're creating a actual walk-through virtual reality where you have your hands and everything, and you can reach out and touch things, and they have heat and cold and everything like that. They're coming out of beta testing soon, but you may want to check them out for some ideas.
What's the name of that?
The Void, VOID. And they're down in Linden.
I don't know if you remember the early iterations of Star Trek, but they had these places where they go to
holodecks.
To I don't know, to recharge and vacation when they're going off in space, and they'd be in different realities, and we're approaching that. Amazing.
So assuming any continual evolution of the technologies that we're currently doing, and we could already create these immersive environments. So I kind of operate from a perspective, if we can already do it, then it's probably been done in some situation. And if you were to tap that type of individual or experience up into a big database, say you use machine learning to look at the biorhythm monitors of a bunch of people who are in this matrix, this immersive experience, and then you either have the experience evolve around them from any given moment, or you bring them out of it and talk to them and say, okay, well, based on your feedback, literal biofeedback of your experience, we're getting ready to build this new thing that's even greater than what we built before. And so since the universe operates in fractals, we know that you've heard that saying, as above, so below, and what's inside is also what's outside, right? So it's basically fractalization. It's looking at a mountain, then a little rock on the mountain, and then a little piece of that rock. And they all have the same inherent pattern, no matter how big you go or how small you go. So there's this emphasis in the spiritual growth community about, when we progress to 5 dimensions or 6 dimensions, we're not going to have physical forms really anymore. But I find having a physical form to be a very immersive experience. So I think that we'll keep the physical form, but it will be a digital avatar of a physical form or something along those lines. I mean, who hasn't played some sort of video game or stepped into a movie literally and got lost in Harry Potter and felt like they were part of the action, right?
I was in Middle Earth, man. I was there with Frodo and friends. Yeah.
I think that when you allow these experiences,
just notice the time. We need to.
We got to wrap this up. Man,
I'll wrap it up in 60 seconds, and then you can take it from there, John. Sorry.
Okay.
The child just has to come out and share this concept with you. When you take that kind of learning system, and then you allow any spirit to step into that system, So basically, you're willing to share your experiences in life wholly and completely. You're not worried about the security, the privacy in that regard. If you're not judgmental of yourself, then you got nothing to hide in that regard. And if sharing your collective experience that you had as a human being in this body would empower the collective whole to improve itself. But in order for somebody to experience that, they'd have to go live your life again in a different world, seeing the actions that you took and why you took them. And what if everything in the spiritual community is designed to teach us that that's exactly one method of what's going on right now for learning? And when we stop judging the experience, because in reality we're living our life for the first time, and then everyone else is going to come live that life after us and experience that experience. So the less judgmental we are in each iteration, the more we can just step into it, enjoy the experience, and then build these greater and greater things.
Rock and roll. Hey man, if you're down in southern Utah or you go off to Brazil, give us a call. We'd love to hang out. So anyway, you're on. Stay in touch, okay? And love your participation and where you're coming from. You're really in a zone. So good luck and God bless in Brazil. And maybe we'll run into you in Louisiana one of these days in the not too distant future. So
I'm just glad to be here with so many amazing people every day.
Oh, I totally agree. Hey, look, everybody, thank you so much. It was real, and we'll be back hopefully next week. And thank you for participating and keep on practicing and meditating and transforming, because we really need to show up in a good way. So we'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.